Hey guys, welcome to Duke Uther's video. I'm glad you guys are tuning in, and I hope you really enjoy this one as much as I did. He gave me a phenomenal list of things I need to work on, and it was really nice to be included in the video. Um, it's starting to happen more and more, so you're probably going to be seeing my ugly mug a little bit more on these videos. But some of the things he was talking about, like being ahead of the tempo and trying to figure out where you started to fall behind in the fight is fundamental ways to help you become a better fighter. Plus, diving down and deep into books. Nobody's ever said that, and originally it was actually one of my top five things. Not to brag, but you know what I mean. So it's pretty cool to hear some different, unique perspectives on becoming a better fighter from a very experienced fighter. I hope you guys enjoy the video because here is His Royal Majesty Duke Uther. Okay, and we are officially live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again, as always, for tuning in to another fantastic episode of 5 Methods on How to Be a Better SCA Fighter. Tonight we have His Royal Majesty from the West, Duke Uther. He's been fighting for probably longer than most of us have been alive, and that's pretty phenomenal. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him take off with this.
So my name's Duke Uther, or Anthony Lynchman Danley, and I've been fighting for almost 30 years now, 28 or so. I started about the time I was 21, coming into 22. I'm 49 now, and I just won my 12th crown. Before that, I won a coronet coming up before I started winning crowns. And so I've had a hell of a run. It's been awesome. What I can say I'm most proud of is the 8 of my squires that have been knighted. I've had a couple other squires who didn't go on to knighthood, who got married, had kids, and they just can't seem to find the field anymore, and I miss them a lot. But of my squires who got knighted, 3 of them are now dukes. All the rest are viscounts. These are a group of guys who are high achievers, and I got to be honest, being my squire for the first generation, it was like a Spartan a go-get camp. It's you survived being with all of us. You got good at fighting because you had to fight to stay alive. Later, we got some training and some mojo going because about the time I'd won my second or my third crown, I realized that we were not the best teachers, we were just the best doers. And that really changed. And from that, I had a journey of trying to define or trying to explain what I was doing. And so tonight, when I talk about that, I'm going to lay a little bit of that out and some of the things I think are key. I think unlike someone like Duke Sean, who's a phenomenal, that guy can come in and give a class and in a couple hours really distill down what he does. I'm really good at like, I spend 6 months with you, coaching with you, talking with you, and I just keep whispering maxims at you that if you listen to these maxims, they're not 100% correct, but they're most often correct, and they drive you towards success. And that's actually where I think a lot of my strength lies, is really good fundamentals, because I don't really want, in this conversation that I hope we're having, and I hope you see it as a conversation, it's not about me telling you how it should be or changing your fighting. I want to change how you think about fighting, because if I change how you think about it or how you're seeing it, then you can implement changes in your own fighting that won't interrupt your style and your current success, and it'll bring you a little further.
Love it.
So tonight I want to open up with a quote. This is from Miyamoto Musashi from the Book of Earth. No man is invincible, therefore no man can fully understand that which would make him invincible. Musashi. I always loved the Book of Five Rings by Musashi, and I recommend it to all of my squires. It's often one of the squiring gifts we give out. I think he does a great job of laying out fighting and talking about different ideas and concepts on fighting. And that leads me into my very first point. If you're in this sport, as much as you want to be a stick jock, read a book. It doesn't matter if those books are about fitness, medieval chivalry, even the Viking sagas. I love Irish sagas, Morgan Llewellyn, Cuchulainn, The Red Branch. There's all these books out there that are going to inspire you, and you're going to be living it a little stronger. And some of them will be about swords play, some of them not. A lot of sports mindset books really, it's not a bad way to supplement what you're trying to do. But let's get into the SCA side of it. So in my background, I actually come out of the West Kingdom, and where I come from, it's really important to know that I've been doing this so long, there was no internet when I started. So you get armor, you went to a fighter practice, there were two armorers in my kingdom, you hoped that one of those guys would sell you a helmet, you waited for that helmet patiently for months to get that helmet, and you hoped that leg armor might work out, or you started cobbling together armor. So there was none of this internet, like snapping your fingers and getting, none of it was easy. And I don't say that because I'm like, yeah, I walk uphill in the snow both ways. I say because you had to want it to get it. And a lot of the times people talk about your heart, your drive, your whatever. And I think that's an important quality is your heart and what you're bringing to, no trainer is going to get your heart or your why or your meaning. You yourself are going to have to find that and bring that to the field. But if you have a passion, and I immediately fell in love with the SCA and fighting, I was nuts from like day one. I got to be honest. I played D&D like all the other nerds. I love Errol Flynn's Robin Hood. I read all the sci-fi books, Lord of the Rings. I did all of that. I'm a cliche waiting to happen, and here it is. So, but I also did judo and jiu-jitsu. And the other thing that was going on in the West Kingdom when I started fighting is Duke Paul was just kind of wrapping up his heyday. And there's another guy referred to, Sagan the Kingmaker. And Duke Paul fundamentally had what I would call the best biomechanics and the best fundamentals of fighting. And he was teaching that heavily, and that was prevalent across my kingdom. That heavily affected my fighting. And then there was Sagan the Kingmaker, and Sagan was different than Paul. It's not that Sagan couldn't talk to you about the fundamentals, but Sagan was a drills and execution and developing your performance kind of guy. And I had a lot of access to both. And at this time in the SCA, it's a little like the old school Kung Fu movies, for those of you who watched them that are badly dubbed. It was like my Kung Fu versus your Kung Fu, Crane Kung Fu and Praying Mantis. And everybody had a different reason and a way to fight. And we're all trying to put it together, but it was competitive and not collaborative. And now we see mixed martial arts dominating other martial art forms because it's all come together. And part of that is the internet, and we have the internet. And that's why I mentioned when I started, there was no fighter video. You couldn't see a video from Duke so-and-so from Ontier, or you couldn't see one of Duke Sean's classes online, or you couldn't get Luke Can's class online and get his best ideas and integrate it into your own style. So in a lot of ways, you were in this kind of school of thought and you defended your school of thought. The SCA got infinitely better and fighting got infinitely better, and it's elicited a ton of change. And in my 25 years plus fighting, I've seen a phenomenal amount of fighting. When I started, there were still wooden shields with heater hose around them. They weighed like 15 pounds. Who's got a 15-pound shield today? Nobody. Nobody had a center grip anything because it weighed so much, you'd be hanging it down by your ankles because you couldn't lift it up. And so fighting has changed, and it's keeping changing, and it's developing. And so when you're out getting training, a lot of what I'm going to talk about, I hope is still relevant because I've been around the block for a while. But again, I come from a judo background, and one of the things judo means is the gentle way or the art of advantage. Judo and jiu-jitsu refers to always building advantage in a fight, and that's something I really try to do in my fighting. And everything I do in my fight, I'm playing to my next shot. The shot I throw at you, I'm not trying to win the shot, the fight there. I'm trying to set up to my next shot, which will be harder, hopefully faster, and in a better position. Those are three fundamentals that run through my fighting more than anything else. So how do I get there? So I talk to my squires about slope steps, active blocking with the sword, active blocking with the shield, movement being always with a primary action. Like you don't just take a step while someone's looking at you and expect they're not going to see it. Like that's not a surprise. What you want to do is as you're blocking a blow, slope stepping or sliding out and taking an angle. And I'm almost always working in kind of an X pattern past somebody. And that X is a slope step. You can pick up a lot of footwork in fencing manuals or period things or a lot of that. They talk about it more in depth than you're going to hear right now in this conversation. But in general, you're looking at a 45-degree angle. You want your sternum facing in at the center of them. Ideally, they're still facing this way as you're turning in on them and you're getting a little angle. And really all you've done is build your advantage. That first step as you block and you slide over, plus 10% to you. Minus 10% to him for throwing his next shot because you weren't where you were last are. You're over by about 6 inches. That 6 inches is a big deal. If you take 6 inches out of someone's shot, they're not going to hit you. They've got to retarget you. They've got to reacquire target. It takes time. You're building advantage into your fight. So there's a lot of ways to do this. This is where timing also comes into play. We'll talk about timing a little bit more and define it. But I always look at timing as having an idea of what's coming next or what's likely to come next. And that's not just about what your opponent does next, that's what you're going to do next. So if I start sliding around and I block a flat snap, I X step or slide step to the left a little bit as I get a little angle, and then what comes next? It should be an offside shot, right? Probably not a wrap. The wrap is not going around the shield that way, right? So I'm looking, I know that. So as I start making that first block, and I talk about active block with your shield. What do I mean by an active block? I don't mean block the shot, come back, and then throw a shot as you're stepping. What I mean is my shoulders going up, my other shoulders going down and loading me so I can throw a shot. It's all happening like this. My offside shot is starting, or my snap is starting. So I go like this, I can from here go offside or onside. So as soon as I start making that block motion, I'm chambering a shot back to throw at you. That is my go. You have put me in motion to strike you from my very first block. And if I throw first, that's fine, because when I throw bang, bang, or bang, and you block, I'm already rolling out to do what I think is going to happen next, because I've had some read on where you're going, where you're moving, and your intentions. And it's not that I'm throwing pre-planned combos, not that I don't throw a combo or two just to kind of set the tempo or gain initiative on somebody. What I'm really trying to do is occupy you and take you out of thinking about your fight and doing what you want to do, because it's never your turn, it's always my turn. And if you're fighting my fight, I'm generally ahead in this exchange. So I've talked about ways to get the art of advantage, so I want to recap a little bit. First thing is, every time you make a block with your shield, offside, onside, leg shot, if you can slide some movement into that, typically a 45-degree angle movement, you can build advantage. That would be like a plus 5%, plus for 10%. You've moved over a little bit, you've made their next shot a little harder. So same thing, active blocking with the sword. I see a lot of guys with the sword out there, they make a block, but their hand's dead, right? When you're blocking, like let's say an onside shot with your sword, and why you're not using your shield, I'm a really big proponent of, if it's coming at your head and you can cover it with your shield, you should be, because now your killing tool's available. But that's a different point of view, and not one that everyone shares. And your sword and shield style will alter that. But back to active blocking with the sword. When you pick that block up, you're going to hit that sword and come out and strike. You should be loading your next shot and getting ready to strike somebody. It shouldn't be, I block a shot, I go to guard, I throw a shot. It should always be, as you're making that block with your sword, you're leading into your next shot. Same thing, I reiterate, with that shield. You drive across your body for an offside, you're starting to slide around or initiate, maybe going around somebody, just even a little. And now your snap comes in behind their ear and you're catching them, or he's got to work a lot harder to block it. And when you're making, and you're doing two things. One, you're stealing time from your opponent because you're acting in their action and you're stealing tempo. The other thing that occurs there is when you add that little angle, even if you don't hit them, what you've now done is make them work harder to block, because they have to get a harder angle. It's harder to pull the shield back. They've got to reach further. And in doing that, it takes more time for them to adjust and reacquire target with you. And now you're building that advantage in your fight and going to get ahead. And so these are some areas where I talk about building the art of advantage. And I talk about this with my squires a lot. And we drill this extensively with attack and defend drills. And those could look like, I throw a shot, and then when I throw a shot, my squire is going to block it, and he's going to come around and pop two shots that make sense off that to open targets. And when I throw that shot, I'm going to put my shield down. I'm going to put my shield up. We're going to change that up, but I'm going to be the attacker. You're going to be the defender, and we're going to run that 25 shots or 20 shots. And that's not necessarily at fighter practice where you're out there to have a good time. That's at the private training or the personal training or the beer and pizza day, like I like to call it, because if you ain't having fun with your training, then why are we doing this, man? I think you really want to have fun. So those are some of the things I think about. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is, even in defense, you should be thinking offense. And what I mean by that is I heard a really clarifying point from Jocko Willink in his podcast. He's an ex-Navy SEAL, an amazing leadership coach. I've studied him a little bit for business in my professional life. He's got a great book called Executive Leadership by Jocko Willink, I think it is, or Extreme Leadership, or Extreme Ownership. I apologize. Anyways, in this podcast, one of the things he talked about is when you're a Navy SEAL and you're out in the field, when you're on the attack or you're taking somebody out, you have the advantage. The bad guy doesn't know you're coming in, you're surprising him, you're stealing his initiative. He's got to regain himself. You can back foot him, and you take it, right? When you're on defense, you're sitting back, you're not active, you're passive, and you're not attacking. And in the fighting we're doing, if you're being defensive, even if you're looking for your counter shot, you're absorbing blows and damage and letting somebody build initiative and build their fight on you. I think that's how you lose fights. When I'm in my fight, I'm constantly looking to take initiative back. When I make a block, I want to come around on somebody. I really want to start advancing my fight again. And if I'm absorbing it, and there are ways to advance your fight when you make a block by moving and taking position. But again, that's activeness in your defense. You're never passive in your defense. You're always on attack in your defense. You're setting up for what you're going to do next to your opponent. And that's another way to build advantage. And I think that when you think about where you're fighting and what style you're using, doesn't matter if you got a center grip style, if your hand out front. I know a lot of guys out of Vontier that are just brilliant with that style and give me fits on that quick flip and that quick dot to the eye with a thrust. Mm-hmm. Even with that difference in style where I'm fighting a strap shield, that universal point of build advantage, look to seek advantage, all those points still pay dividends and will help you out. The other thing I want to address in this is, and I've heard a lot of the other commentaries say, use your lizard brain or your passive brain. Lizard brain, it sounds kind of cool. We're nerds. We like D&D. Lizard men, I don't know. That being said, we talk about it's okay to plan and strategize or think about what you're going to do outside of range. And range is once a step plus a shot length, your full sword length, way out of range. It's Duke so-and-so, he likes this, he likes that. It's Squire so-and-so, he's got a great flat snap, he's going to throw that. Guy sucks at a leg shot, can't block a leg to save his life. Know these things, put them in your head, think about them in your battle computer. Mm-hmm. As soon as you're stepping into range on somebody, that's go time. It should be zero focus. You should be having a vague idea of facing his hand or his sword, having an idea and orientation on that, because that's where the threat is. But also, you should be attacking him, killing him, striking him, taking him to task. He should not be comfortable in your range. Even if you're not throwing shots, you should be altering your position and seeking advantage in your movement, in your body language, and your positioning. Again, that's all subtle pressure. And some people, I may want them to throw first, and how I'll get them to throw first is I'll step forward. Now, I wasn't going to do anything. What I wanted him to do is panic or step back and snap really quick or flip shot. And as he throws that quick flip out of here at me, I know right where his sword is and where everything is, because that's timing. I knew what was going to happen next. I could see it coming. I saw that if I like this, his hand twitched. He pulled up a little bit. And in that motion, okay, I'm going to give you what you want. And your opponent's going to tell you how to kill him. Your opponent oftentimes has a thing he wants to do. And so I would like to facilitate you doing that and feeling very comfortable as I strike you. And part of what makes that work for me is I fight in what I would call prime tempe. In fencing, we have due tempe and prime tempe. And fencing is a great time of describing measure and timing in a way that we just don't have the language for heavy fighting. If any of you get a chance to get a lesson with a really good period Don or a fencing guy or a white scarf to talk about footwork and how he describes timing, fencing is amazing for it, because there is no real clash of blades compared to the broadsword fighting we do. It's really about the timing and the one touch, right? Yep. So going back to when you're trying to, man, I lost my trip. So we are trying to build advantage or steal time or fight in prime tempe. Prime tempe means as I block, I strike. Due tempe is I block and I strike. It's coming right after, right? Prime tempe is single time motion. Prime, queen's single tempo. That prima tempo, I believe, is where crown victories, great fights end, great moments occur when somebody sees it coming, puts their shield completely committed, or you can just see that guy stuffing his stick into the other guy's stick and then cracking the guy in the head. But it's all determined in that one dynamic body motion. And that's called prime tempo. And so ideally, if you're stealing time for somebody or taking them out, you're going to get them into a prime tempo situation and hit them. That would be my ideal way to hit somebody, because I know right where their sword is. I'm comfortable about blocking it, and then I'm going to lay into you on the counter shot. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in building the art of advantage is it's critical important that you don't stop swinging until you hear hold, good, or the person falls down. One of the things in the building the art of the advantage is I'm not done fighting until my opponent tells me I've won. He cracks me in the head and I got to fall down, call hold, or take it on the chin. And then, but if I'm not assuming his chivalry, I'm doing work. I'm doing my business. And until he falls down, I can only control me. I cannot control the shots he is or he isn't going to take. I don't even worry about it. Because what am I playing to when I started this whole thing by saying my long tirade, because I'm a Duke and we talk forever. I started this by saying that I want to build the art of advantage, and I'm always playing to my next shot. And so typically when I win a fight, I land 2 or 3 blows in a row because I got ahead of the curve and I broke out, and I don't hold back on those next 2 shots. The third one is usually the one that's the hardest. And if he calls good before then or falls down, I don't throw it, right? But you should never stop your motion because your body should be building that advantage. So by the third shot and the number of times in the first shot, the guy's like, maybe, and then bang, bang, you hit him twice more, he falls down. There's no doubt. Everybody's way happier. You put a double tap in there, the convincer lands, game over. And you know what? If he's a good guy, he's never going to mind it because he wants to do it to you and you're going to take his shot too. It's all good that way. It's brotherly love. You've never met a group of guys that want to kick your ass more, that are going to pull you up, give you a beer and make sure you're all right than you're in the SCA. That's a great place to be. So that's my first point, building the art of advantage. Attilius, what do you think? Any questions on that area? I'd love some feedback from you.
The art of advantage. Let me write that down first.
Sure.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's still something that I'm developing and I'm trying to develop. Especially the thing that resonated with me the most was talking about when you were talking about like catching those blocks with your stick or with your shield. And I am one of those stick block catcher guys. And one of the things that I need to work on specifically is, as you said, if you're catching a block with your stick, you need to be throwing that next shot like almost immediately.
Right.
And throwing the shot immediately is definitely what I need to work on specifically. So thank you for pointing that out and throwing that out at me. So
one note to put on that, right, is even if you don't throw the shot, the threat of the shot does take initiative from your opponent, right? So if you come over and bang, and this is not a combo I lead into, I almost always block down.
Yep.
But when I come over and block, I start rolling my shoulder back. If I see it covered, I don't have to throw the shot. But what I want to do is be able to throw the shot immediately. So you can hold it into chamber, and there's so many ways to roll energy and go someplace else that you can just re-roll that and put it away, and then now it's open. Now you drop the bomb. So that would be the other thing, is it's the ability to do it, not the actuality of having to do it, because you throw the shot when the time is right or the opening comes.
Perfect.
All right.
I had one little thing to add.
Sure.
I came from fencing, collegiate fencing, and basically the rules allow for right of way, but the key thing was the person who establishes the attack always has the advantage. You have to take that advantage away from them.
I would agree.
So the whole thing is, like you're saying, establish your advantage, establish your attack, and don't let up until they're on the ground.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's preem.
And by the way, in that, I don't want to say that it's not that I won't break engagement, spin around, re-engage. I mean, all of that's part of the dance, because we're having a conversation with rattan on each other and feeling each other out. And there might be something where 3 or 4 passes happen and no hard engagement happens.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're trying to get to where you have an advantage. And if you never have an advantage, why would you step in?
Right.
You wouldn't go hard with somebody unless you get to a point where you're like, I'm getting tired. I got to throw the bones on the table and see if I roll at snake eyes or at 12 because I don't have that much more gas in the tank, right? And that might really happen to you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so.
Especially as you get old.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Let's get back on track. And you ready to go for number 2?
Number 2.
Okay.
Yes. So the next one is training to fight. This also means community and fun. And the reason why I bring up community and fun is nobody's becoming the king of the pal in their backyard. This is not going to happen. It's no fun, man. You got to think about your community, your friends, establishing relationships. The relationships are what make the SCA amazing. You know, a group of reenactors who are historically really accurate and do amazing things, a lot of those groups don't have the one thing we have in the SCA. They don't have relationships. They don't have knights. They don't have squires. They don't have those lifelong friends. The relationships are different because they're working on craft, not recreating history. And so a group of American, in a lot of ways, horribly dressed, not very accurate SCA knights went to Agincourt, did a whole passage of arms there. And the historical custodian of that group, of this historical site, that when you rent the site, you get a historical custodian who knows everything, watch this whole tournament. And when they first showed up there, he was a little put off by seeing these guys in combat boots, engineer boots, and doing all that. The next thing that happened is these guys all started having, they had a feast afterwards, and they had all these meaningful dialogue and exchanges of relationships, knights and squires. And that is, I think, the core of SCA and fun. And so whatever training you're doing, I really do hope that you'll think about the fun factor, because I always in my household, we, on numerous occasions, especially around peak tourney season, which we have 3 crowns here a year. So let's say from March to October, a lot of times we've got a second practice that's a private practice, because not everybody wants to nerd out and do slow work. And we're going to talk about that first. But the point being that I go to fighter practice to bang, have a good time. I'll do a couple slow work passes to warm up. But then we have our private practice, which is a beer and pizza practice as well. But we're not going to put our armor on. Helm, sword, and shield. And then we do what's called slow work. It's a very Western thing. I know it's traveled around a little bit. I know some of it in Artemisia. I know Sean advocates for it and some other really good trainers. And I think the great thing about slow work, or doing slow passes with somebody, and again, that's helm, sword, shield. I had one of my squires do slow work without his helm on, took a sword to his eyeball, lost vision, blind in one eye. You know, Odin loved him after that. He saw the Allfather. He could tell the future. It was worthwhile in some regards, but not every regard. So if you don't want to risk the Odin will love you and you can tell the future, put your helmet on. The other thing is you don't want to develop bad habits of not following through and touching the face or hitting the face. And slow work is all about building your form and your biomechanics and working timing. And the great thing about slow work is, again, it's 1/3 speed, it's touch power, maybe a little more than touch power, and you're just going to do a fighting pass. And every time you hit somebody, just step back, got it, and then go back in and have another engagement. You don't have to, you know, each one's not a real fight. You're just going to go through these, right? And as you do that in slow work and you call that out, there's a lot of things going on. One, you're working through biomechanics and all the footwork, and nobody's punishing you for it. Duke God so-and-so is not hitting you in the ass cheek with a wrap. Therefore, you're willing to step around, and when you miss the block, you're not flinching. I mean, I really do think fundamentally that slow work is a way of trying new ideas and working through your foibles and your errors with no consequence for action, right? Because someone touching you, if you have so much ego that you can't take a touch, then you're in the wrong game, right? We really want to foster each other, develop each other. And then from slow work comes the ability to start doing drills and training. Hey, I've got a left-handed guy, and every time he throws a high wrap, I just never see it coming. Can you throw 10 of those at me in a row? And then I'm going to work on different blocks and counter reactions. And what you're trying to do is map out not just your block, but your step, to build advantage, right? Because you're trying to build advantage. You don't want to make his next shot easier. Your block, your counter shot, your movement, put all that together and not get drilled in the throat for it with an offside by a left-handed giant, right? I fight Dan Drake all the time. And the hardest thing about fighting Dan Drake is he's 6'8". He makes me look tiny. And I have nobody else like Dan. And so I've almost had my squire stand on a stoop and chuck Dan's offside or his wraps at these really weird angles just to feel him in a way that I'm not getting crushed for experiencing that. And it's helped me work through how I'm going to address something really different. There might be a guy that's got an amazing offside shot. Same thing. Leave yourself open for offside and then start reacting around it. I'm going to step to the left. I'm going to roll my shield over. Oh, when I roll my shield over, there's an offside shot available to me because actively I was driving one shoulder over. That lowers this shoulder and gets me ready to throw a shot. I'm leading into what I'm doing next. What footwork should I use for that? And then it's not just that counter, right? You're building advantage. What is your next step or the third step? Because a lot of fights are lost not in what happened in the block you miss. I think a lot of fights are lost 2 blows back where you lost initiative or you started losing timing with somebody. Somebody throws a shot, you get here, you barely make the block, but now you're behind in the curve because you barely made the block and you're chasing your next blocks and then you get hit by the third shot. Well, the answer then isn't, I didn't block it. The answer is, I made the wrong block. I reached across my body. I should have sword blocked that because that was faster and easier. And then I could have made my next block here much faster. You've got to look for where did your wheel start coming off? Not when did the wagon wheel fall off and the wagon hit the ground, but when did you start losing initiative? When did I stop being in control of my engagement? When did I feel out of control at all? That notion can be felt in slow work. And so in slow work, you have the opportunity to train all those things. So that would be my first way of training is slow work. Once again, helm, sword, shield, 1/3 power, 1/3 speed, working through fights, and then adding drills to that as we talked about. My next thing is PEL work. Like everybody else in this podcast, I'm going to talk about, or this broadcast, I'm going to talk about PEL. It's the mantra. That being said, I think a lot of people who put videos up online get it wrong. I really don't think PEL work, again, is really about targeting, which I hear a lot of people reference. I think it's the last thing I worry about. What I really worry about in PEL work is 2 things. I want to make the biomechanics perfect. I want my whole body moving, and I'm exaggerating this motion. When I'm really fighting, it's a much tighter motion. But when I'm doing PEL work, it's a larger motion. I'm trying to feel it. I'm trying to work through my body. I'm trying to make sure I'm behind everything I'm doing. And then the other thing is developing neural pathways in your head. So every action, much like driving a stick shift in a car, every time you do that, if any of you have driven a stick shift or you can't drive a stick shift today, then you're a millennial and God love you, but you should learn how to drive a stick shift. The thing is this, is driving a stick shift the first time you're thinking about it, you're grinding gears, it doesn't work. As you do it a zillion times, you shift in and out of gears, you don't even think about the motion anymore. And what happens is every time a neuron fires in your brain and fires across, you're building a pathway. Well, every time you fire that up and that electrical pathway goes, the more times you activate those 2 synapses, the larger the path gets. Mm-hmm. So I want a superhighway for my flat snap. Easiest, hardest, best shot to throw in the SCA. And right now, my flat snap, even when I come back from a break and fighting, is still right on tap. Maybe not as accurate, but the fundamental motion and the body behind it and the power never leaves me because I've got a superhighway. Thousands of flat snaps in my fighting. I've done it in my slow work thousands of times, and I've done it thousands of times in my PEL work. So you have an opportunity in PEL work to develop those neural pathways and get to the point where it's like driving a stick shift. That offside body shot comes in and there's on it, right? You're not thinking, you're doing. And if you're in your lizard brain, your mind's just going to trigger. When your body is told to win a fight and you're thinking about winning a fight, but you're not thinking of how you're going to win the fight, and that opening comes, the trigger will go. A lot of great fighters talk about it all the time. I had an engagement. I don't know what happened. I just nailed him in the ribs, or I nailed him in the head, or I nailed him, But afterwards, you don't remember thinking that because you're in the right place. You're in your unconscious mind, your passive mind, and you're just doing it. And that's where great fighting comes out of. The other thing I would talk about Pell work is we do a drill. We call it a 1 through 6 drill. I've heard it attributed to almost every Duke in the world. I got it from Jade. I believe he developed it. It wasn't something I heard out of like Paul or Sagan schools when I was younger. Maybe they were doing it too. It was very West Kingdom by the time I came around. And the premise is this: is you mark your Pell like everybody else. Got those 3 marks: head, body, leg, right? And then leg is 1, body is 2, head is 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? And then you're going to just go through a pattern of 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6. And then you're going to go 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, right? And then you're repeating, right? 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 4. And you're going around that tree. Now, why am I doing that? What I'm really trying to do is 2 things. Is I'm learning how to throw a shot from any shot to any other shot. A lot of guys follow where their sword wants to go. And so if I throw an offside, the first thing they want to do is go back to the onside. That may not be what's open. What might be open is a deeper offside. And so I should have my body trained. So when I shoot that first shot, when I see the opening happening, because he doesn't react well, I've got him behind a bit. He blocked with his stick. There's no bandwidth. Now I'm going to come around with that next offside deeper and hit him in the side of the head and drill it. Now, how did I get that trigger reaction? I have a neural pathway that's this wide because I've thrown 100 double offsides. It's not a common combination. I win a lot of fights with it. It's not that it's the best combination. It's the combination I needed at the time. How you get that is going from any shot to any other shot on the tree. I picked 3 because I don't think you need more than that in the breakdown. What's fundamental on this, again, is that biomechanics and Pell work. And so when I do that first drill of 1 through 6, usually I'm standing still because even I got to warm up a little bit. My second time or third time around that, I only do it 2 or 3 times at a go. I then will start moving, and everything's got a slide or a step. And again, slope step, either direction, adding angle, changing angle, and changing range is super important. I see a lot of guys doing Pell work, and they're in this ideal situation. They've lined up on their Pell, they've got measure, they're looking at it, they load their sword, and they're like, crack. Well, no shit, you hit that. You didn't move, you set it all up, and you had 5 minutes to do it. That's like a one shot in the SCA. They're unusual and they're easy, but they're rare because when someone's really ready, they never happen. And so what I think about Pell work is the opportunity to change range, practice movement, and develop neural pathways and work on those biomechanics. And I find when you start stepping and moving, it's one of the biggest complaints I get from people. Yeah, I just don't move my feet enough, or I can't move, or I'm having a hard time moving when I fight. It's because they don't train it anywhere and they don't have a place they're doing that. It doesn't have consequence. Here's that place. You can slowly work through this, and you should be honest with yourself. Can I hit that shot hard? Can I do a better job of it in that Pell work? So the next thing I'm going to throw on you is, we called it fighter math. So a lot of you guys, this is especially for the new guys out there. So I have, and every guy who's fought for a long time has a period where they're obsessed with fighting. But I would talk about fighter math and how I overcame guys who were much better than I was in my first, let's say, 1 to 3 years of fighting. I was going to practice consistently, and I typically went to practice somewhere around twice a week to 3 times a week because I had nothing else to do, and I was single, no kids, nothing. I was out fighting all the time, having the time of my life. But in a 12-month period, if I was fighting twice a week, every week, that was 24 times. That was 110 times, I guess it is, in the year, or 96 times in the year. So if I'm fighting 4 times a month and somebody's fighting once a month, or they're fighting twice a month, they've fought half as much as I have. And I was on an average fighting 2 and 3 times. So at the end of 12 months, I have the opportunity to have 3 years of somebody else's training time. And ultimately, in this, experience is one of the greatest indicators. So if you want to bend your curve and become a better fighter, you can do that by training more than others, because if somebody's not training, you're gaining ground on their experience. So if you're fighting twice a month, you know where you're at, right? 12, 24, right? You want to get that to 48. You can keep adding to that. And so I think that's a really important thing to think about. If you want to get better than people who've been around longer than you, you're either going to have to wait a long time or out-train them. This is your opportunity to out-train somebody. The last thing I'm going to talk about is on training and fighting is even when you're not feeling it, and supporting that, getting out there and adding to your numbers and building your baseline of fighting in your helmet time, because you're all about building helmet time, is critically important, is even when you're not feeling it, go to fighter practice, have 3 sets. If you're still not feeling it, get out of armor, then you can go fuck off. It's totally cool. But you have a promise to yourself that I'm going to fight weekly. I'm a weekly fighter. That's who I am. That's what I'm about. I don't break that. And even if I'm not feeling it, I'm going to go give that a try and give those 3 fights. And if you have 3 different passes and you're still not feeling it, get out. For most of my fighting career, I've had that mantra, especially when I'm getting ready for a crown or I'm training for something I really want. And in doing that, I feel better about who I am because I'm living to my standards. And then after that, if I go home, I'm like, I'm still not feeling it. I feel sick. I'm not up to it. That's fine. I didn't pike out. I didn't quit. And I developed my heart muscle or my integrity. I think that's a valuable thing for what we're doing. So Attilius, what do you think of that? Is that working for you?
Yeah, it's jiving with me real deep. Especially the last little bit that you were talking about. For me, when I'm actually working out in the field, on average, I work between 16 to 18-hour days, and it's very difficult for me to find the motivation to suit up after I get back home. And so when you were like, you made a promise to yourself to become a better fighter, you show up to a practice, you at least make 3 passes, and if you still don't feel like fighting, then you have permission to suit down. That resonated with me wholeheartedly, and it's actually going to be something I plan on using in the future. So
Awesome.
The other thing that resonated with me also was about setting yourself up at the pail for the perfect shot. And it's like, well, no shit, you're going to hit the pail. It's not moving anywhere.
Right.
My daughter wants to say hi.
Hello.
Say hi, Cece.
Hello.
Yeah. And so that one also resonates with me. And excuse me, getting over a cold. That also, and just the typical, hang on one second. I'm sorry.
It's all good. So, one thing I didn't get into on that is when I was talking about training, I kind of skipped over practice a little bit, and I wanted to set one more thing up for practice. When you go to practice, I tell my squires the same thing every time, and I would use this universal even for myself. Everybody who's at my level or better, drive your race car around the track, go full at them, give them your best fight, and do that. 2 of you are going to do a training fight. Everybody who's not as good as I am, or who isn't like laying me out, or I got to really stretch on, I would put micro goals in my fight. I'm going to block 3 shots before I throw anything at this guy. I'm only going to kill him with an offside headshot. I'm only going to kill him with a wrap to the back of the head. I would put arbitrary goals in, and I would move around and try to keep the fight honest, maybe crack him in the shield or do things. But I would say that for squires all the time. When you go to fighter practice, fight the people who are at your level with goals in mind, training restrictions, things you'd like to do. Everybody above you, just go at those guys. Call those knights to task. Put the hurt on them if you can. And then if you find that you're doing better than that guy, stop putting the hurt on him. That's not cool. But until you get there, give that guy your absolute best fight and let him know what you're about. And then with the other squires and people who aren't as good, especially a new fighter, don't pound on them. Just set goals. Let them throw 4 or 5 shots and think, I'm only going to hit a slot shot. That's the hardest thing in this guy. He's got a giant shield. He's really holding up. Can I peel him open? And that's another way to develop your fighter computer. So micro goals in your fighter practice are really important. And that goes back to fun. I want to talk about fun a little bit more in this. And that is, if you go to a fighter practice, go hang out with the guys, have a beer. A lot of information and pearls of wisdom come after a few drinks and your buddies are hanging out. And that's part of what makes it fun. Beer, soda, a burger, whatever it is. Most fighter practice have a social component afterwards. Don't skip on that, because a lot of learning comes out of going there and being part of that and knowing people. And those are the people that you're going to build your community with. And that's your resource book. Those are also the nights that when you have a problem and you're like, that weird guy who throws that offside shot, so-and-so, I should go talk to Sir Attilius. And Sir Attilius, he will help me with that and make sure that he'll throw that and show it to me and talk to me about it. If you've never had a beer or a burger with that guy, he might not say have the same conversation with you. Be friendly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And that also helps you get out of your comfort zone and actually meet these guys that are super intimidating when they say they're Duke Uther and you're completely petrified to meet them, or Duke Sean, and then you realize all you have to do is ask, and they want to teach. So
I'm
it's
desperate to find somebody to fight. I got to tell you.
and desperate to find somebody to fight. So
My local fighter practice, the Bay Area, as small as it is, traffic is so bad that it takes like 2 hours to get from San Jose or 3 hours to get from San Francisco or Oakland to San Jose. So the practices are really divided up, not large. And my strategy regarding the practice is I almost always will Facebook, hey, who's coming out? Because Facebook is a great tool for finding who's going to practice. And then people are like, oh, you're coming out, Uther? I'll see you there. And then I get a little more fighting out of the deal and we hang out. It's a really good way to develop relationships, get to know people, as you said, especially Duke God so-and-so you don't know.
Yep.
Just like everybody else, when I go to Starbucks, I pay $2.75 for a venti hot coffee. It's no big deal, man. We want to hang out with people.
absolutely. Perfect.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is mindset and focus. I think that I love Dietrich's, Duke Dietrich out of Atlanta. I thought he did a killer job of talking about this, and who's funnier than hell, funnier than I will be.
Yeah.
I love the Pez dispenser comment. Bravo, brother. Bravo to that. That guy was awesome. So confidence is key, and you got to feel like you're going to win the fight. And it doesn't matter whether you win the fight or not. And there's a great, very Tony Robbins moment when I say you have to conceive you can win to achieve the win. You have to conceive you can win. And give yourself a reason to win. It might be how much you've been going to practice, or it might be that old man ain't got nothing in his tank. He's tired. I'm young. I'm going to kick his ass. I'm an old man now. I think that young guy, he ain't got the experience. I'm going to put a whipping on him. He doesn't know what I got in my bag of tricks. Whatever you tell yourself on the old or the young or the fit or I'm ready for it, it doesn't matter. That's an internal dialogue where you're not trash talking the guy, but give yourself a reason to win. And then another thing that I like to use a lot, and I use this a lot before crowns and other things, and I actually think it's really helped my fighting career, is visualization. I don't believe in mystic bullshit. That being said, I believe your lizard brain reacts to when it knows you want to do something and you can achieve more than you know you can. And so visualize winning in some component, such as your opponent defeated on the ground before you and you're saluting. I mean, you don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be going, and tap dancing or trash talking him. You can literally be like, I salute you at the end of a fight and be elegant about it and visualize that. And that doesn't pull you out of your mindset. It could be, one of the things I visualize a lot is the knights ringing me before the finals of a crown tournament. In our culture, whenever we get to finals, all the knights are called to the field, we make a ring, all the knights take a knee, and the two fighters go to the middle and they fight. I visualize that happening. I also visualize the current king, because I know who it is. I visualize him laying the victory wreath on my head in those moments. I know where I'm trying to go, and I'm trying to download that to my lizard, to my little lizard man brains in there, and it's wanting the commands and the cues of what to do. And then hopefully he'll come out and win the day for me, right? Because I can't actively think in the fight. So I'm trying to get that loaded in. Next, I'm going to say there's no mystic bullshit. Stay away from people who are just too wordy and you don't understand them, and they're selling you a bunch of bullshit zen. My favorite quote from a fighting event ever was the following: a shot should feel like a corn husk, and the corn husk explodes with ripening like popcorn or something. And this guy goes on, he's fucking serious, and I'm like, he's telling the squire, and you see these poor three squires looking at him like, what the fuck are you saying? Nobody knows, right? I mean, a corn husk exploding, a rice husk exploding, that's not fighting. Everything we do in fighting can be broken down, explained, trained, and drilled. And when somebody makes it out to where you've got to go to a mountain and drink holy spring water, get away from that guy. There's no mystic bullshit. There's just hard work, dedication, and a little natural talent. I think the most natural talent you can have is you can be a natural driver. You can naturally drive yourself to where all the fighting is happening. If you don't get there, you can't learn anything. So, and then this was covered by a couple other guys, and I like what they said. You got to find your why. And you got to find your why to raise you up, because, and especially in a tournament situation, you might be fighting for your lady, and that's very inspiring. I've been in love, and when I'm fighting for somebody I love, letting the person down that I love would crush me. So I have no tired in me. I will puke after the fight, but yeah. I want to achieve. I had a household of brothers when I was in Monctier, very mercenary household, not quite as developed as the black company like you guys, but I loved those guys and they were watching me. I didn't want to look bad. My brothers are watching. I'm out here to do something. I'm fighting for my brothers. I have been very fortunate to be a kingdom champion of Inter-Kingdom Wars. And that is probably the hardest death I've ever taken when I've lost. I've lost a couple of those fights, but I've won a lot of them. And I'm telling you right now, when in my head, I say I'm a kingdom champion, I'm here for my kingdom. And I'm, again, that self-talk you have builds you up. I'm like Cuchulainn before the gates of Ulster, and I'm defending my people and my clan. And you go out to do that, that is a winning mindset. And so you got to find a reason to get to practice because you're in your own integrity and you're doing what you need to do, a reason to walk out and do pell work, and a reason to fight in the tournament. And, you know, there's so many ways to do it. There's not a wrong way. One of my squires, he fought for the line. He fought for his knightly line. And I really respected him for that because it made us all feel good. It's like, oh, he's fighting for us. But that's what he was passionate about. So again, there's no wrong way, but find a why and visualize and think about that if possible. Bring that into it. The next thing I would say is nobody loves your armor like you do. And what do I really mean by that? If you have 1 ounce of doubt in your equipment, you are blowing it. My wife is a psychologist. She's really way smarter than I am. And she laughed when she started meeting me and seeing my obsession about fighting and all the things I did. Because this is what Crown Tournament looks like for Uther. I make 5 swords. I cut 5 pieces of rattan, shave them all down. I discard the worst 2. And then I wrap 3 swords. Now I've got 3 swords. And then I swing them all around my garage and I figure out which ones I like best. And then I label them 1, 2, and 3. And then I go to fight practice those swords. And I see which ones fight best. And then I circle the one I want to fight with in Crown. And then I put a star next to one as my backup. And then I have my 3rd string player. Now, that sounds obsessive, but here's the one thing once I started doing that, I broke a sword in Crown. I had another sword waiting. There was no intellectual stress. And I didn't pull a jelly bean out of my pie because I didn't spend a jelly bean worrying about my sword or what am I going to do or my basket hilt's loose is going to make another round. It did not take me out of my fight. That starts, by the way, on Friday. When are you getting to site? Are you getting there at 2 in the morning and putting your tent up? And how are you getting any sleep? You're going to get 6 hours of sleep. Your wife's with you. You got a little kid. You're trying to put your tent up. Did you get any sleep? Probably not. I take the day off work or I have a plan to get there early. I get a hotel room, whatever it takes to get me a reasonable amount of expectation of sleep and preparedness. And then in my kingdom, and every kingdom's a little different, but where are you going to put your chair and sit down? Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. I mean, do you not know where you're sitting? I've seen guys walking around the Eric with their chair, their lady's chair, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to sit down and what's going to happen next. You know what they're not doing? They're not thinking about Crown Tournament. They're thinking about where they're going to sit. They're taking themselves out of their fight. And every one of those decisions is a jelly bean out of your bowl. And when you really need them in finals, all those jelly beans are gone. That's intellectual fatigue happening in all these subtle ways. Most famously, Apple, black t-shirt, I can't believe it. Anyways, one of the CEOs, he basically talked about, he only wore black turtleneck or a black t-shirt and jeans ever.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, thank you. I can't believe I didn't read. Good pull, Julius, good pull. Yeah. Saving the old man, Alzheimer's is setting in, look out, woo! So when Steve Jobs made that decision, he said, I want to eliminate all the bullshit decisions out of my life and only be thinking about the big problems I want to solve. At Crown Tournament, you should be organizing all of the things you need to successfully sit down and be ready for Crown ahead of getting to Crown. That affects your mindset and your focus heavily. The next thing I would bring up is in that Crown prep, you shouldn't be talking and bullshitting in your helmet. When your helmet is on, you're out to kill people. It's go time. It's lizard brain. That is go. I'm the friendliest, chattiest guy with the helmet off. As soon as I put the helmet on, that's fight time. That is the same thing at practice. And I've been training my lizard brain about we're hitting things now for 25 plus years. So when I put my helmet on, there's changes I go through and I'm ready to fight like that. There's a really great story about a long distance runner who used to run ultra marathons, like 200 miles and 300-mile runs and things.
Mm.
The moment he started walking towards a running machine or doing these kind of things, his body that had monitors on him started immediately cranking up endorphins and going into changes because his body knew what was coming next. You need to train yourself to when is it go time, and you need triggers. I think the opportunity to put your helmet on. The other thing I do in that is I gather my lady up. I do not want to be at the side of the list wondering, where do I salute? Have you ever seen that guy? And maybe he's a little bit of panic because he's, there we go. Here's how you solve it, brother. You put the helmet on, you go over and you take your lady's hand. And my lady, can I walk you to the field? We're the next fight. Now, when you hold your wife's hand like that, or your consort's hand like that, it's a Waterhouse painting. It's beautiful. It's awesome. And they feel special. And she deserves that because she's putting up with you.
Absolutely.
So now,
I think consorts have it harder than we do out on the battlefield, personally.
I think a lot of times they do, because I've seen a lot of them be way more nervous than I ever was in finals.
Yep.
So then you have her hand and you're walking out of your pavilion. Walk her to the place you're going to salute her. And then say, my lady, I will return to you here. Let her know this is what's going to happen next. This is almost like timing. You're pre-planning what's going to happen next. You're setting yourself up for success. Now, here's the other thing. When it comes time to salute, you can look cool. You're going to do a big flowery salute. You know right where she's at. You can take your moment. And in that salute, gather yourself. Make those mental pictures in your head. Do that. Do not hurry your salute. You have all the time in the world. Tell yourself you have all the time in the world. Nobody minds a thoughtful salute. People hate people who are late to the field. That's not honoring your lady.
Yep.
Taking a knee, saluting your lady, bowing a little deeper. And that's why I sent the picture in with me bowing my consort, because I was gathering strength. And that picture I sent you that's went out for the advertisement of this was in the last Crown tournament I fought in. And I was bowing to my lady at the time, Vera, a very close personal family friend that my wife let me fight for. And I wanted to honor her. And that you can see the concentration on my face because
Absolutely.
I'm gathering myself. And so that is Crown prep. Crown is not just going there hitting people with sticks. So now that is that topic. The next thing I want to talk about is how to break down. Tell you this, was that all covered? You like all that? Any questions in that previous section?
No, I'm good to go.
You're my voice of reason here. I'm talking
Yeah.
a lot, so I want to check in with you because I'm just rambling on. So.
No, I'm loving every second of it. So that's why I'm trying to keep my mouth shut as much as I can. So
okay, so this will be a little less wordy and shorter than the other two. But as I go back to saying, when in a fight did the wheel fall off your cart, or what are you lacking, or why is it? Why? Then you want to get to the point where the wheel's wobbling, not the point where the wagon hit the ground, right? And so we broke fighting down into 5 essential elements in my household: speed, timing, range, targeting, and power. And basically, when we talk about speed, we talk about your 0 to 60 speed, right? 0 to 1 shot, your 2-shot speed, and your recovery, right? And so it's not just bang and I got a shot. It's when are you ready to go again, right? And it can be 1, 2. And so speed is important. You got to know if you're slow or fast. You got to have an honest assessment. And an honest assessment of these 5 qualities, a lot of times, is where the wagon comes off. You know, that guy is just faster than I am. I can't lift my shield as he's snapping, so I should get a pre-block in. I should bring my sword over and bring some sword defense in. He's just faster, right? Or, you know, I seem much slower. People are always blocking my shots. Maybe you need to cut 2 inches off your stick and make it faster and a little shorter and fight in a bit because you're slow by nature. One of my former squires, Warwick is not the fastest guy, but his timing is impeccable. And he fights with a slightly shorter sword. And he was one of the first guys in my household to do that. He's like, yeah, I'm not dragging that big thing around. I'm going to get faster. And he just did. And that's, you can modify your equipment to alter your speed. You'll make adjustments to your speed based on your opponent and how fast they are and knowing a little bit. And so that read of speed is going to help you in many areas. And that's one of the places your wagon might get a wobbly wheel. The next place is timing. Timing is described by a lot of people a lot of different ways. The simplest explanation I have is it's having an idea of what's going to happen next or what possibly could happen next, and how to make things happen next or set yourself up for what's going to happen next. It's all about what happens next to me in timing, because to get ahead of timing or to usefully utilize timing, you got to get ahead of it. So that goes back to that slope step. When I slope step, I know where I'm going to be. I know what shots are open. You have to know what shots are open before you get there, so you don't have to figure it out and then throw. You want it to be instantaneous. I slope step, the legs open, snap. That's what happens. You know where you're at. So timing also incorporates, as I said earlier, your opponent attacking you. I see the guy wants to throw the flip shot. I see he wants to throw a snap or a leg shot. Let him throw the shot, step in to let it happen. I'm not saying give him a larger opening. I'm just saying let it occur and have your counter be based on what you think is going to happen. A lot of times you're going to be right, and when you're right, it's going to be a home run for you and an easy win. The next thing is targeting. Again, I don't think that's developed in Appel. I think you get smooth and you get slow, and slow is fast, right? You work those body mechanics, those neural pathways, and your neural pathways, or once you get those that road really fat, the targeting will show up. But it's important to focus on a smaller point. You're not shooting an 1.25 inch gap. You're shooting at a rivet. You're hitting a bar on a helmet. You're hitting an exact location on a leg. You want to be hitting a 1/4 inch with your sword. You're not thinking about it. Now, here's the deal. Much like archery, you shoot at the bullseye and then you hit out a little bit. That's okay. So the smaller you ask yourself to shoot and your lizard brain to function in, the greater your targeting is going to be. And that's how you develop it. But you got to get those neural pathways. You know, if you work targeting and it's not a wide pathway, it's something you're super comfortable with, your lizard brain is not going to be accurate with pressure, movement, and dynamic motion of fighting. It's just going to blow the shot. You really got to be like, you got to be able to the point where you can't help but throw a snap correctly. Then the targeting, really great targeting, shows up. The perfect, I'm set for my flat snap targeting, that's easy. Everybody can learn that in a weekend. That's no big deal.
Right.
The last one is power. So we talk about power, and this is something I think that in SCA in the last, let's say, 5 years has dropped off a little bit. I don't think we're hitting as hard as we used to be with CCE and other problems. I don't think that's a bad thing. I've also think with the calibration in the SCA has kind of come in a little bit. And it was something that I experienced after taking a break from Battle Nations 2012 to 2000, I guess, 16 or so. I was overseas fighting Russians and Ukrainians. God damn, those boys can fight. I came back to the SCA and things just seemed a lot goddamn faster. Well, people weren't hitting as hard. People were in a forward stick guard. They're moving faster. And I gotta accommodate two things. One, I don't need to hit as hard. And if I want friends, I can't be crushing them. So that's one aspect of your power. The other aspect is how much power do I need for a shot to be good? And so when it goes back to those biomechanics for your Appel work and your slow work and getting your body behind it, I like to leave 20% power in the chamber for that special moment when I need to put a condenser in, or I just know I'm going to hammer the shot home. Then I lean into it. So when I talk about power, the shot you should be throwing, will everyone take that shot? Will most everyone you fight and throw when you're throwing that shot, will everyone take it? Because if the answer is no, you shouldn't throw it because you're wasting initiative and time. You should be throwing killing blows every time. I don't throw anything but a killing throw. It doesn't mean I don't pump and fake, but when I throw a shot out there, I throw hard shots, and that's a bunch of reasons. One, you don't know if it might hit anyways, but the real thing is I'm leading into my next shot. As I said, I'm always developing my next shot, and so I want my body to use those proper mechanics and be driving. And so usually in my case, my first shot is fast. My second shot is often faster, and my last shot is often my fastest and hardest shot because I've got my body wound up behind it, and I've been trying to lean into each of these shots successfully and build. And you should be building up in your power curve. Like I said, a lot of times when I want to fight, I land 2 or 3 shots at the end, the last one being the hardest of a lot that I'll pull off of if somebody's going to take it. But power, I have had squires that power's been a problem. They just don't hit hard. What do you need to do? Do you need to be physically stronger to hit harder? Is your stick too light? If you fight with a telephone pole, it's slow, it hits way too hard. There's a lot of variations in how you can control your power, length of your sword, how you're swinging, and your technique. These all feed into your power dynamic. And so I would say that's why we talk about power. And again, that's a place you know, you could, Sigersworth, one of my squires, he had a period where he just couldn't throw a hard leg shot. And, you know, his leg snap just wasn't hard enough commonly. And what came out of that is a lot of times he'd hit somebody in the leg, they wouldn't go down. They'd step in and get an advantage on him. And what he did to solve it is he started doing Hindu push-ups or dive bomb push-ups. Matt Fury's got a really good program of 300 Hindu push-ups, 300 Hindu squats, and you're done. Look it up on the internet. Super effective. It's a 15-minute morning workout. He put a bruise on me and dented my leg armor. I came back after an ACL surgery, and I was so proud of my squire for putting the hurt on Dad. It was a good one. So, all right, so now the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this is my 5th point, so the old man's done talking just about.
So could you you actually glitched out on number 4. Could you just tell us what that one was?
Sure, targeting.
Targeting, got it.
And the targeting is, do you have the biomechanics to get the shot there, and then focus on the smallest point possible. Targeting is not about shooting an 1.25 inch gap. You're shooting at a rivet. You're shooting at a bar. You're shooting at a 1/4 inch. You should be aiming at the smallest thing you can see, because much like archery, when you shoot at the bullseye, you land outside of it. So you want to be focused all the way down. You do not want to be looking at a gap this big. It should be microscopic. And the thing is, when you tell your lizard brain to do that, it will do it for you. It knows what you want. Now, that requires that neural pathway to be a wide freeway, because you will not have the bandwidth in your, first you're going to throw the shot, and then any energy you have left over in the pie of throwing that shot will go to targeting after it's launched. So you want a really wide amount of a skill or initiative left, or energy left to throw that shot. That'll fix your targeting. That'll let you ease into putting the last bit of change on it.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, we like literally as you were saying, my number 4 is it glitched out. So
okay, does that cover it?
We got it. Yeah, yep, you got it.
All right, man.
So,
all right. The last thing is applying what we've talked about, and it's not actually how you make a better fighter, but it's in some way one of them is. But really, it's about what are we doing this for? What are your goals? And hitting that a little bit. I want to touch on physical fitness. I'm not a trainer, man. What I can tell you is this. It was massively apparent in Battle of Nations fighting, and it really drove it home to me the following. Every ounce of fatigue you feel, let's say you're just 10% tired, that's -10 to your fighting. It takes from your advantage. And through a day of fighting, the number of guys who, and that's also intellectual fatigue, that is not just physical fatigue, especially in a Crown tournament. I've ran into a lot of guys that have got to finals of Crown, and they're just blown. And they're not physically blown. They got some physical energy left. They're intellectually blown. They've only got one good hard pass in them. And then they start, you can just see them not being crisp anymore. And so physical fitness drives that, and as well as being prepared for Crown drives that. So HIIT training, getting a CrossFit gym, 30 minutes on elliptical multiple times a week is usually enough for the SCA. You do not have to be an Ironman or a CrossFit athlete to be fit enough for the SCA. It's kind of a fat hobby when you think about it. A lot of beer drinking going on there. That being said, you should be able to do 3 full-out fights with a small break between and not be gassed out. That should be your metric. If you cannot go to practice and have 3 good fights with somebody and not be gassing, you got to get your fitness going. I'm a real fan of what Kuhn said. I love Kuhn's video. Thanks for interviewing that guy, by the way. Yeah. I've known him for years, and I've never been drunk with him and had him wax poetic, and I got it from your damn thing. I loved it. So his thing about kettlebells is great. HIIT exercises. I love rowing on a rowing machine. I do a lot of things. And then I would honestly say you'll be surprised. You start doing slow work. Slow work is its own workout. You put 30, 40 minutes of slow work in, you'll feel it. It really is a workout. It's not a high cardio workout, but again, it adds to your overall fitness and takes from your fatigue. And you really want to finish the day off with 0 fatigue on the books. It's a big deal. Mm-hmm. That's mental and that's physical fatigue. That's that point. I want to talk about knighthood a little bit and Knights Council, because a lot of us out there listening to this, one of your goals might be being knighted, being a master. I think it's important. I think one of the most important things to remember when dealing with Knights Council is it's an imperfect process, and knights are human, and they might have had a bad day. And the guy you fought last Tuesday at practice and you smoked also might be coming back from injury, a layoff, or he might have been way better when he won, or when he got knighted, I should say. and you're catching him not at his best, right? So just because you beat a knight or you beat several knights doesn't mean you're going to get knighted. Don't let that get inside of you. That's just poison. You want to be, are you beating the best knights? Are you beating the recent knights? Are you one of the best fighters? That's how you know your prowess might be on point for knighthood. And then a lot of times, something that people miss is you need an advocate. You need a smart advocate. I see a lot of knights not get good feedback. So the questions you ask your knight could help this. You know, when a knight says no for somebody, what they're really wanting to do is see something out of you. They might want to see franchise. That guy looks like a bucket of ass every time he walks in the field. He's got a pickle barrel wrapped around his chest. I see the blue pickle barrel from across the field. I mean, what the fuck, right? That is a legitimate complaint. And that guy probably ain't getting knighted. So if you're looking to get knighted, your franchise or your appearance is going to be very important, right? Your prowess is very important. And talking about fighting more than you fight also is going to go against your prowess because people don't want to hear blowhard, right? So those are important things. Knights Council, by the way, is usually divided into 3 camps. The prowess knights or the fighting knights that are hardcore about fighting. The paw or period knights who are really about doing period, looking period, reading a book, reading. That's why I said earlier, read some books. It's important to those guys. And then lastly, there's a smaller subsection of war knights, and they just want to know you fight for the kingdom or care about the kingdom usually, and you've been out in war, get some war chops, whatever that is. And all of those knights are representing the entirety of the kingdom. And there's all the knightly virtues. It doesn't matter if it's 7, 9, or 12. There's different levels of knightly virtues. But all those knights are making sure these virtues have all been addressed in some fashion. And when someone asks that of you, don't think, but they didn't do it for that guy. You weren't, whatever meeting that guy had, he got through the council and got knighted. That's not your meeting. Your day is your day. And you know what? The king is not short white pieces of leather or lamp chain. We can make as many knights as we want. There's no shortage, man. So go check these boxes. When someone asks you for something or you get feedback, and make sure you're asking, hey, why aren't people wanting, you know, what do people think is holding me back? And then ask the next question of, what does solving that look like? If they want to see more franchise, what does franchise look like? For one of my squires, it really came down to every time he walked in for invocation or the start of the crown list, him and his lady, they looked like a hot mess. They had a small kid. They came in, they're half in mundane clothing, half in modern clothing. It was just kind of, that was one of the things. He didn't have a banner. He just didn't look very knightly. And a couple of knights noticed that, and they brought it up. He got a banner. His wife got a new dress. He got a new surcoat. And those guys were like, hey, man, that looks great. He looked really great the last crown. Thank you. It could be a simple fix. It also could be, you know, when someone says you don't fight good enough, have you fought that guy? Have you given him a hard fight? And if you haven't, go fix that. That's easy to fix. You can go have some sets with that guy, or at least show him you got some chops, even if you're not winning the fights. So that'll help you towards knighthood. And let's see. The last thing I'm going to bring up is ethos. We put it all together. So it doesn't matter if you're Duke, you're a knight, whatever your goals are, the greatest mercenary ever. It's all cool, man. I want that to be all part of the SCA. I got the biggest tent mindset. I love all of it. I even love the weird samurai guys and the masters of arms. I'm cool with the master of arms. I'm good with it, brother. I'll take all these guys. So have an ethos. What are you about? Because you know what nobody likes? A Welsh samurai ninja Norman. Nobody likes that bullshit. What are you about? Are you, because there's a really great guy in our kingdom named Lash. He's in red armor. He has an amazing Japanese thing, and he's brilliant at it. And he makes the field look good. People like that. And he does Japanese garb and other things. He brings a whole persona out. And I don't mean put a cheesy accent on and talk like you're in a Braveheart extra movie. What I mean is read a book, do something, talk about history and that. When you talk to Lash, he'll tell you about Japanese history. He is an educated man. And to be a knight in the King's Hall, or to be a master in the King's Hall, or whatever king's man throughout history, these were men of worth. They could speak publicly. They could define themselves. Samurai were known for these things, right? So were Norman knights. Eleanor of Aquitaine, very famously in the later after that, basically got the ladies of the court. And if you didn't bathe and have manners and come to that, you got no women. They just put a pact together. That helped bring modern chivalry forward. And so that matters in the SCA. your attitude and how you present yourself and the ethos. So even if you don't have to have a hard period. You can wear different kinds of garb and things. You don't have to wear just one thing. But really, read books of the history period you say you're interested in. One of my squires, who I love heavily, he's like, I want to be a Mongol. And I'm like, all right, what can you tell me about Mongols? He went, Genghis Khan. And I'm like, what else you got? He's like, Genghis Khan. And I'm like, well, have you read a book about Genghis Khan? He's like, well, kinda. And I'm like, so you've got one of all the Mongol history, you got Genghis Khan. You got to work on your Mongol a bit, brother. If that's what you need, because before you get knighted, you should be a man of worth. And if someone wants to know about what it is to be a Mongol knight, you should have a few words about that. And then that takes you to the last thing. It doesn't matter if you're a master or man at arms or that. Read a book on chivalry, know the knightly virtues. If you don't have to read King's thick-ass book on chivalry. I've never slogged all the way through that. I have read several short write-ups on the knightly virtues and thought about them, and hold roundtable discussions with your friends and bring them up. Learn something, hear other people's point of view, and be open to it, because it's going to make you a better citizen in the SCA and broaden your fighting experience. Because one thing in this whole thing is, I've talked a lot about how to fight better, but my goal in this is not just to have you be a better fighter, but I want you to be a better martial artist. And being a better martial artist is part of knowing your history, where your martial art comes from, and what's relevant and important, because what is important to those people of those time frames will inform some of your decisions and make you more interesting. And that's what I got tonight, brother. I hope you enjoyed my long ramblings.
Oh man, that was probably one of the better shows. So, and I probably shouldn't say that on a live video, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. I wish you wouldn't have brought up Lash so much, because his head is already the size of Japan. So
yeah,
all we need is it to be bigger.
Well, I mean, what better than a guy who runs around in a giant red, I mean, a red streak. I mean, hard to miss that guy in the field. You know what he's doing.
It's true.
You're not thinking, is he a Norman or a samurai? You know. And I appreciate that, even though that's not my gig. I'm really, personally, by the way, I started the SCA. I got into the Viking thing. I read all the Viking sagas. I can totally, if you want to read a great Irish saga, Morgan Llewellyn, by the way. And when I say read a saga, I don't mean read the Old English, thee and thou. I find historical telling of that. It's a big bacon-wrapped history pill, and read that. You can read the Uhtred saga by Bernard Cornwell. That will get you screaming in your bedroom going, kick his ass. You'll get into it. It's good, right? And after that, nobody who reads the Uhtred saga, everybody wants to be a Viking for a few minutes after reading that book. And it's great history. So find those books or those things that are inspiring, and the authors who write historical fiction that'll give you the history, but in a bacon-wrapped history pill.
Absolutely. I've been doing that. I challenged myself earlier this year, or at the beginning of the year, to read at least 10 pages a day, 10 to 20 pages a day of non-fiction, non-fictional books. And so as I developed my Roman persona, I decided to actually start reading in Roman books. So I'm glad you brought that up, because originally it was one of mine too. So
can I give you one? I'll read it too. I'll make you a deal. I've not read this. Marcus Aurelius' book on writings, his book of hours, or there's a book he did that's his musing and his thoughts. And a friend of mine who was an amazing savage out of Caid, who's no longer with us, Dirk, he would quote Marcus Aurelius' writings all the time. Not only did he sound smooth as fuck for saying these things, it was funnier than hell, because there was great advice in the Marcus Aurelius, I think it's a book of hours. Oh, look at that. Woo! He's killing it. This man's killing it. He's going somewhere.
I've actually read it already. Let me turn this off.
All right.
So you can actually see it. So it's the Book of Meditations by Marcus
That's what
Aurelius.
it is. Thank you.
So I know that's really bright. So, but that's what all these note tabs are, because I read it and loved every second of it. So thank you for the recommendation. I should read it again. So
look, you've got some Roman chops now. You're ready to go. We should be knighting you. Let's get this done.
Yeah, just tell that to Sean.
All right, you got any questions for me tonight?
I do. So for me, I was challenged by Sir Helga and I ask this every episode that we do. Out of your 5 methods, which one was the easiest for you to develop, and which one was the hardest?
Sure. The easiest one for me was basically getting to practice. I loved the SCA, and I was obsessed with fighting. And most great fighters have periods in their life where they're stupidly obsessed with fighting, and they're fighting 2 or 3 times a week. I share that history with every other great Duke I know, where they were obsessed for a period. So I love fighting. So my why, getting to practice, doing all those things, I did all of it outrageously. What I sucked at and what I struggle with to this day is timing. Timing is hard on me. I got to be honest with you. Of the 5 qualities, I would much rather jump in, throw the bones down on the table, and go, "Who's taking this one tonight?" Because that I just have that in, and I have the innate faith that I'm going to come through it. And I don't always, but I do often enough that it doesn't hurt. That being said, there's guys I know I can't do it with, like Duke Sean or some of these other guys I fight. I got to be careful and thoughtful. And that patience is the hardest thing in that fight for me. And I'm working on my timing.
Gotcha. Perfect. And then another question that I've been asked to ask is, you've been fighting for a really long time. And so what is your tips for newer fighters to increase their longevity as fighters, to like prevent injuries or, burnout, so on and so forth?
Well, injury and burnout, different topics. I think injury is keeping a minimal level of fitness, not adopting techniques. If things start hurting, stop doing that. I know it sounds trite to say that, but I know a lot of guys, well, it hits people and I do it. I'm like, but does it hurt? You should stop, right? But burnout or making it fun, one of the things I say all the time is I wish that I fought with a very small shield style, a square shield, 24 by 25, not a big shield for years. I'm 6'6". I was dancing everywhere not to get legged, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I shattered my ankle in a really bad injury that I had to switch to a heater. I switched to a longer base shield. And then I had like 2 or 3 years of still a lot of problems. And a second surgery that corrected it. But I ended up staying with the longer heaters and things. In part, I got older, I'm a little slower. But really, I found a lot more elegance in my fighting. I had a lot more time. And the one things I say to people all the time is, I'm not a huge fan of the fight with a buckler for 2 years. That's bullshit. That sounds like punishment. You learn how to get hit doing that. What I would say is get a couple other styles of fighting that are functional, especially if you're at a small practice where you don't have a lot of variation in your practice. If you're you fight with a center grip shield, do you know how to fight with a strap shield?
I started with a strap shield, so yeah.
Perfect. So my Squire, by the way, has 2 shields. He has a full-size kite, and then he's got a smaller kite, and he uses both shields. And especially with Squires, people aren't as good. He uses the smaller shield to force more movement and to change the fight up and to change development. I wished 2 or 3 years into using a square shield, I would have diverged and tried other things more often, because really what happened was I was very good. And about the time I won Crown, let's say 5 years in, I was excellent with that shield style. But then I was putting hours and hours of work for just like a 2% improvement or 5% improvement. My really big jumps came when I made the leap of using different shield styles and seeing how the other half lived. Then I started getting a bunch of other data points. I got to say, I'm fighting with a center grip shield. I fought with a kite, oval for different periods. Both of those were massive learning experiences, not only how to fight that style, but also how to do shield management. It made me a better fighter in other ways. So I drifted back to a strap shield, but to beat the burnout, change your fighting. If you can't change your opponents or you're getting stale, change your equipment up, length of your sword, your shields. And then again, if you're fighting Duke God so-and-so, bring your A game equipment, but keep some B game equipment around that you can play around with, really. And that,
Perfect.
by the way, one more thing I would say on that is have armor on that's good enough to fight anybody. You should not be worried about getting hit in the body. Especially the Ukrainian or the Eastern European armors, you can buy armor cheap these days off the internet. You don't even have to make it yourself.
Yep.
Get some body armor, get some decent armor that anybody can hit you, even the guy who hits hard, and it's not a big deal.
Okay.
I really wish I hadn't gone through some pad boy phases. Back in the day, by the way, we didn't have Lamellar. I'm not kidding. Lamellar, I remember when the first suit of Lamellar showed up and we're like, oh, that's so Viking and sexy. We were all excited because now we had Viking body armor that wasn't chainmail, because chainmail sucks as on batons hitting you. Anyways, so armor as well.
Okay, got it.
Longevity.
Perfect. So Emerson Waite asks, who are your top 5 past most challenging fights, and who are your 5 current most challenging fights? From Christian of Antier.
So that's King Christian, who's a bad man, and I've not had a pass with him yet. He's a next generation Super Duke. You should interview that guy. He's amazing. Look, the guy who trained me, Duke Jada Starfall, he is still the most winniest guy in the SCA I ever met. And he is still to this day the hardest pass I've had, was the hardest pass I had. And I remember as a squire just wanting to hit him with a leg shot or laying any wood on that man at all for a long time. So Jade, which sticks out in my mind. It's really hard to pick the hardest guys I've had to fight. Not that guys haven't hit me or put the wood on me. It's just okay. Actually, Duke Al-Anon out of he's out of Adenvelt right now. He's from Meridias. It's really interesting. That guy, he hits a full level. It's way lighter than I'm used to at home. And I always wanted to take his shots because he's a very clean guy. It's his technique. He's a technician. I love his fighting. I think it's amazing. I wish he hit 25% harder, because when I'm taking him, I'm like, did he get me? Was that a good one? Or did he miss that? It's not like here where it's bang, you know. That being said, I have found him to be utterly challenging every time I fought him. And I don't think I've cracked that nut yet, because I feel like he's still ahead of me. Other guys that really stand out, I always liked fighting Duke Thorne out of Vontier. He was amazing. And Duke Sven out of Vontier. Duke Sven, Gunnar's son, has one of the most amazing, consistent. I mean, that guy can rope these 100-mile-an-hour snaps at you and offsides. He's just an amazing fighter. And he is not fighting heavy competitive. I think he's fighting with a smaller shield, weird shield style. He's trying to win a crown with a square shield like I did for years. And he's just doing different and odd things. He's also raising a kid and doing other things with his family. Mm-hmm. I found him to be hard as hell when I was a young squire coming up. And over the years, I've just had great passes with him. I would round that out. And there's no particular order on that other than Jade is my number one guy. He's my guy. But all these other guys, it's all very similar. The only other guy I would bring up, there's a lot of guys I could bring up, but I would bring up, wait, 2 guys. I'm going to throw 6. Duke Sean. I love fighting Sean. And it's not that I haven't had a good day against him or he always beats me. But what I love about fighting Sean is when we fight each other, somebody's going to the woodshed. It might be me. It might be Sean, but we've had passes where neither of us, we forgot how to fight, and we're just banging on the other guy going, you were better last time, and then he'll come back the next time and just crush me, and I'll go to the woodshed. I love that about the passes, and those really high-end fights. And the last guy, Duke Branos out of the get a chance. I can't advocate. He is possibly one of the top trainers I've ever encountered. He can break it down better, way better than I am in a physical training sense. He's an amazing trainer. Duke Branos is phenomenal. He's also really good at building community. He gets it. He is the full deal. He's the full package, and I have a lot of respect for him. And I got to be honest, man, when I fought him, every time I do, I feel like I'm chasing. Like, I feel he's just a little ahead of me. It's not that I'm ever putting any wood on him, but I think he's putting a little more wood on me. And more to the point, how I feel in the fight, I think he steals a lot of the initiative. He's brilliant at what he does. So I really like Duke Branos. And so those guys are some guys you can look out for that are amazing.
Perfect. Great answer. Looks like we have a question from Facebook land. It says, what are your views on thrusting tip, and one that comes up the Madu, even though it's not a period weapon?
So again, I'm a big tent guy. Look, you know what I hate more than anything else? Getting stabbed by a Madu.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that.
And here's why I hate it, is because socially it's such a frowned upon weapon in my kingdom. I don't get to fight them. We have one of the best Madu guys in the nation, Christopher York. I should have mentioned him as one of those top 5 fights. Now that I bring his name, I'm like, oh yeah, Christopher. He's not the most active fighter. I don't see him all the time. He is probably the best Madu fighter I've ever fought in my life. He's top 10, 5 guys I've ever fought in my life, Christopher York. I don't mind it because I know some really cool knights that are using Madus, and if that's what they want to fight with, why do I care? I just don't. You know, it just doesn't bother me. And when other knights whinge about it, and that's whining and whinging, God, brothers, just let it go. Because here's the deal: if you were really knightly, you just kick their ass. You just let it go. And when it comes back to thrusting tips on swords, I famously walked out on the field when Miles and Alphar were young squires. They're dukes now, and they were sewing machining each other on their knees. And I literally pulled the knife out of my pocket and cut their thrusting tips off their sword and said, "Both of you fucks can have this back after you win a tournament and learn how to use a sword." And so what I would say is, don't rely on the thrust. It's just one more tool in the toolbox. If you're throwing all thrusts and you're missing a lot and you're not making it work, it's integration. In this, I came up in a generation, and I mean 15 years of fighting thrusting tips because low profile wasn't legal. When low profile became legal, it was a game changer. It really changed fighting. It's part of what killed the high open style, honestly, because it's really bad against thrusting, and before then it didn't exist. And that's the square shield style that I came up with as a kid or a young man. So integrate it, work on it, use it like a tool. Don't overuse it. It's like a guy who throws too many offsides. You know, the guy who throws 100 offsides, that sucks too. Same thing with thrust.
Don't overly rely on it.
Right. Well, you shouldn't rely on anything, and that's what I'm getting to. You should be throwing you should be throwing the shot that's open, and that flow of blows thing, right, is what's the open shot? It's not the shot you're saw, but that's the thing, like people windshield wipering or they're thrusting, but is it open? It should be like bang, smooth, boom, into your next thing. What is the most open shot? That's what you should be throwing. And if it's a thrust, drill it home, and that's awesome.
Perfect. All right, so the next one is from Ragnar. He asked, or they ask, what would your advice be to a hidden kit Viking for increasing their visual franchise?
Sure. So first off, don't run around in pajamas. For the love of God, get some aluminum lamellar. We know lamellar for Vikings is only pseudo period. We accept it in SCA. It weighs 5 pounds. And then when your buddy cranks you with a wrap in the back, you won't mind it. Then if you're going to do that, put greaves on and maybe at least a van brace, and then hide everything else, because Vikings had limited amount of greave, limited amount of van brace, not the most historical armor, but actually in artwork, it's portrayed a lot, even though it's not the most historically accurate. And let's face it, lamellar is cheat for Viking early period when it really is maybe the Varangian Guard, a very small sliver, but apparently every Viking in the SCA swung through Varangia, got some lamellar, and came back to flawless Sweden. And that's cool, man. But if you want to look like but here's the deal. Here's what I would say to you on that. If you want to look like a knight in armor or the king's man, when you read about heroes and sagas, they did not run around in tunics. They fought in armor. And we don't like mail because mail doesn't work well with baton swords. So get your version of that. Nice leather trimmed, right? Get a nice tooled up van brace. Maybe you've got an elbow cup with some cool, one of our guys, Sir Gawain and Sir Tor Kilkana. If you ever know who Tor Kilkana is out of Montier, you've never seen a guy pimp and strut more with his armor and helmets, just brass work and just done up. I mean, and zoomorphic, and it's not the most historically accurate in every regard. Sure looks cool, brings the franchise up on the field. That's what I would do for a hidden kit, right? You've got a real van brace, you got hidden plastic legs, you got some pants on, get a knee patch over the knee so it's not ripping through and you see the plastic. You don't want to see your plastic. If I don't see your plastic and you got all that going on, I'm thumbs up for you if you're fighting well in council. I want you to get knighted, you're one of us.
Perfect. All right. Are there any other questions out there? Anybody want to come on camera, say hello?
Hi.
Go for it.
Sir Richard here again. By the way, I loved everything you said.
Thanks,
no problem. One of the things I like to ask people is what elevates our fighting from craft to art, in your opinion?
Sure. I believe art lives in curation. And so for me, about the time you're a master, and maybe you're not the most, and I mean master in the generic, you're better than
Yeah.
everybody, all your peers around you, right? You start breaking the rules or doing different things, and you put it together in ways no one else has ever thought of. One of my very famous combos that I picked up as a squire through, by the way, a relentless amount of Pell work is I can throw a leg shot to a head shot with no cock or recovery in front of me. And the head shot is brutally hard. I can also roll a wrap and then straight up to the temple as well. And especially against strap shields on the heater when it's on this angle, you just parallel that and you're just KOing the guy.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law, Edward of Aidenvelt, I browned him out fighting in the Outlands Prize tournament one year with it. It's a hard shot, but there's no visible recovery in all of that. And to me, I got a little artful in that moment. So I think when people start putting it together, and then also when you see gross and raw amounts of technique occurring, not just pounding, right? Not 500 shots to do something, but you see, meaningful and directed. And it's very obvious to the crowd. When you step out and you pick a block up and you roll around, you're way ahead. And when you have all the time in the world to throw that shot and you drop it, it starts getting artful. And so that's what I would say, art. And that's, by the way, I think the goal of fighting should be, sure, your goal needs to be to win the fight, but how it looks should be in the list of your priorities, if not, and not your number one priority.
Oh.
But it should be in there, because if you look like and that's not just your kit, that's how you look when you fight.
So what do you feel about being the entertainment?
So that one I don't consider, because unless I'm at a demo or something, and the thing is, I believe we all have to earn our place in the field, and I'm not there to put a show on. I will put a show on if I get another great opponent. I want another great opponent to have a great moment, and I want to have a fight that has a legit clash of arms where two guys come together and nobody knows how it's going to go. That is the best fight in the world to me, when I don't know how it's going to go, and I'm hoping I win it. Duke Sven, current King of Monstiora, I fought him in the end of Outlands Prize this last year. Amazing two-sword fighter. I'd never fought him. What a damn pleasure. The cleanest two-stick guy I've ever fought. Beautiful style. And I got to be honest, I won by that much. I felt thrilled that I did, but I didn't know I was winning that fight. I was so stoked that I had that victory and I eked it out. I really was thrilled. And that was entertaining, because everyone, like, that's a fight where people are like, oh yeah, people got excited because you could see the clash of two great fighters coming together, and it was legit, because nobody was pulling back and trying to make it a show. We were legitimately clashing with everything we had, and then the dice happened to land for me.
Cool. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. All right, last chance. Any other questions for the evening before we call it a night? Three, two. Nope, there's somebody. All right.
Hey, brother.
Yes. So I'm very, very fortunate to have a lot of really great new fighters in my area. Well, Vockerfeld, now Fetberg. Now I noticed there's a lot of techniques, and everyone has different body styles and different body mechanics. Now, I am very fortunate to live in a house with another very, very, competent fighter, so we can train a lot more. Now, what was your recommendation to be to those newer fighters, those people who are trying to up their game, and especially in the female fighter variety, who seem to really struggle to catch their stride?
Sure. So I think the thing female fighters are dealing with, and I'll just talk there, and they'll cover it generally other places as well. Female fighters generally have a much stronger leg and hip area, but their upper body strength typically is lacking, or not as much, and they're dealing with less mass. And so on that 5 things to work on, power becomes really important, and that becomes your shot selection, the sword you're swinging, the length of your sword, because it's going to be how fast and long it is. And so a lot of female fighters I worked with or helped, I got their sword down to like a 35-inch, maybe a 34-inch, heavier, shorter sword, because they needed to crack a little harder. Maybe it was 35, but what you want to do is you want to not be using a light sword to begin with, right? That's somebody, and now your sword is heavier, so now you're going to have to play in the timing into the field. You're not going to play in the raw, brutally fast thing, because what you don't want to be is the person who's really fast going tapa, 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 especially in our kingdom in the West. You guys from the West Kingdom, people don't take those shots, right? And that goes, and when it comes to newer fighters hitting their stride, that goes back to that helmet time. Are you practicing once a month or you're practicing 4 times a month? Because you're fighting 3x somebody else, and you really can get 4 years worth of training compared to the guy who's better than you, who's been fighting for 2 or 3 years. You'll be better than him experience-wise at the end of 1 year, and twice as good at the end of 2 years if you work your training, right? And that's weekly practice. Weekly practice to me is the minimum gold standard if you're going to get better with some Pell work. That's like the minimum. So if you're a new fighter, male or female, it doesn't matter. What I will say is the sport is probably geared, and I don't think it's geared, by the way, to the biggest guy. I think it's geared to the optimized athletic size and coordination. And to me, that's more like 6'2", 6'3", to like 5'8". There's this middle-sized person like Jade at 5'11". He tells you he's 6 foot. He's not. He's 5'11", man. So anyways, he was amazing. But here's the deal. He had all the upper body strength he needed. He had all the power he needed. He could do all of that with his frame and never lacked any of it, right? And so a lot of big guys are slower, you know. So being small isn't a core disadvantage. You just got to know where it affects that, you know, that chart of these 5 qualities, and then look for work around those qualities. If you want a greater write-up, Facebook message me. I've got a write-up from Sigurfrith. That's a really good a fighting manual that we did in the household. That's our household wisdom. I'm happy to show it. It might help somebody. If not, it's all good, brother.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think Lash wants to jump on here and say a few words.
How's it going, brother? I am completely blown away by what you said.
Oh, dude. Love the armor, brother. Love it.
Yeah, I'm completely blown away. One of the questions I had was training women fighters. I mean, I've been in martial arts all my life. I've trained men, women, children in karate and other art forms. And I know the mechanics are different and things like that. What's your advice for training women fighters, especially when they're worried about power generation and something as simple as building their sword for them? I've taken a lot of the women that I've worked with and, you know, shot them off to Sir Helge or Sir Mari or you know, that way, but especially for now in our area, we have several new fighters, all ladies, and so it's really becoming a must for me to learn how to train them properly for their mechanics.
So a couple things. First off, you know, hand forward styles for people who are smaller, that relies on a certain amount of physicality and upper body strength, are probably not going to be as productive. Hand up and above and back, shoulder always cocked, that's always going to drive more power. If we're rounding to the proximity, we can go over it a little more, hard to see in video. But the real thing is, out here and like this, for people who are smaller, unless that's a hell of a fish bat, going to be harder. You're going to need to get ballistic, very do Paul, those big. Now, you know, I like what Paul teaches. I think it's phenomenal. He's an amazing teacher. But keep in mind, you know, you want to be able to, when you're driving that, you don't want to get slow either. So you've got to be able to move the sword. So, you know, in Paul's case, he's running like 38s, 39s, I think commonly, or back in the day he did anyways. The female fighter, you might shorten her sword a little bit and then add a little tape onto the sword or use a heavier piece of rattan to get to the same general weight as a 38-inch sword. That way it's got some crack when it gets there, and that might be 36 or 35, you know. And then on making a sword handle or something, there's something we did in judo and jiu-jitsu, or my sensei said all the time, is all techniques are the same for everybody, and then you modify them as needed. And I did judo and jiu-jitsu for years. He taught the short fat guy, the tall skinny guy, the girl with the big boobs who couldn't reach over. You just got to work through it with that person, what's happening for them, and you got to look at it and then make adaptations. I can say for making a sword, my best, and I didn't go into this, but I make better swords than most people I know. Everyone agrees, wow, you got a great sword. First thing is you want to oval that sword out. You want to know left and right, right? You want to plan it down. Now and then the next thing you want to do is I almost always put a notch on top, a nice big, like 2-finger wide groove in, because I want to know up and down. And so really I'm replicating that classic almond shape you see on a lot of sword hilts. And then your fingers at the bottom are much smaller than your fingers on top. And so you can't really get all the way around. And so you want that to be smaller so you can get more grip here. And that's going to be a little different for women, but not so different than it matters. I've made a lot of hilts that way. But really what you want to do is make sure that person can get to here and close their hand and really hold the sword. And then lastly, you know, when I make a sword, it's an event like I told you, I cut 5 blanks. I'm making, you know, a bunch at once. It saves me time, but also once I start making them, I get better as I go. I will then use tennis racket tape on those swords to ease up on my hands. And I don't use hockey tape for a reason, because it also takes a shock out of your elbow and things when you're cracking and hitting things really hard. It really does help with some of that stress on your joints. So especially if you're smaller or not physically as big or able to deal with that shock, the tennis racket tape helps with that shock and impact on your hand and all of that. And so I don't wear a glove, by the way, when I'm using tennis racket tape, because then now you've got padding and you got a glove on top of that. I generally just wear my demi gauntlet, which is very comfortable and inside. And so that's some things I do. I wish I had a sword to show you. The best thing I can say to you is the top is narrower, it gets big in the middle, and it comes down the side. It's very almond shaped, so I know left, right, up and down. And if you pull on my sword, if I keep my hand like this, the sword can't come forward because the almond shape is sticking, right? And the same thing on going down, right? My fingers are in here and the almond shape's there and won't go down. So I got a lot more control and I feel it. And then I'm, you know, and I do have a little bit of hand motion I'm using, relaxing my hand, closing it. I would, you know, and again, that's familiarity, pel blows, 1 through 6 drill, getting that sword to be comfortable. And then finding what's optimum for that person, because how they visualize fighting is going to impact this as well.
And what are your thoughts on the, sorry, didn't mean to take up all your time, but I also, when I was fighting sword, because people don't know that I fought sword and board, but,
Sure.
but I would offset the cup hilt about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, get a little more coverage on my wrist.
You know, I have gorilla mitts, and literally how I set my sword up, which is not like how a little person's going to do it. I put my hand in the thing with my gauntlet on. I draw a Sharpie line parallel to my basket hilt, because now it's locked in there and I can't move my hand. And I cut that leather off. And so the back of my hand has this much leather there. Otherwise, my hand will not fit in most basket hilts. I kid you not. So if you have the room in the basket hilt, that's great. I put it dead center because I don't want my finger smashed either. And I don't know how big somebody's hand is or a particular hilt. So that's the very like specific to item thing is. As long as you have full coverage, that's great. And, you know, as long as you know where your blade is, that's great. Anything like that works. If you get binding or anything off it, then you shouldn't be doing that, right? If you're worried about the back of your wrist getting smacked, you know, I use a Torvalder leather that I've literally, it's like the smallest demi you've ever seen because my hand's so big that I can't have anything in the cup hilt.
And then my last thing with that is triggers. What do you think of triggers?
I think triggers are great. I personally, if you're gonna use a trigger, I like 2 and 3 fingers. I don't like a single finger trigger. It's easier to get a little strain or sprain on that. I use a 3-finger trigger right now in part because I sprained my hand up really bad. Accident, it's 2 summers ago, and I just never went back to a 2-finger trigger. I generally put that trigger not straight with the knuckles or with the blade. It's a little more off to the side because I want it buried in the webbing of my hand or really tight, and I put it in there and grab it. So that, by the way, much like you're talking about the basket hilt being kicked over a little bit, is it's in the web. I want it on the webbing of my fingers. I want it on more almost on the side of the sword. And then when I push my hand in, I might pull it around a little bit, and then I use it. And so I don't have to have a lanyard, which is nice. And then I do get a little control out of it, to be honest. I mean, I like it in general. Certainly makes throwing wraps. It's got some add for that. As long as you're not doing things you can't do normally or putting strain in your joints, you should be fine.
So now I use three triggers also. Now, do you have one for your thumb and then for your 3 fingers, or do you use all 3 for each finger?
No, it's one trigger for all 3 fingers, just goes over it. It's one little loop strap, right? And then that's got a tack nail into the rattan here, peened over, taped, and then the basket goes on, taped, right? And then I've used the thumb trigger a couple of times. I just personally didn't like them. I found it really restricting, and I didn't feel, the only thing I thought it helped with like thumb lead items, which I don't throw back blade wraps personally. When you look at a lot of my shot selection, I don't throw complex shots. I'm a real big believer in simple things executed brilliantly, hit harder, and I like hitting hard, and it's easier to do. So no on the thumb trigger for me. I know some guys who liked it, just not my thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, brother. And hopefully we'll get to fight some more.
Absolutely. I would love that.
Perfect. Looks like Christian, do you have another question for him? It came on video and camera, so.
Yeah, I don't know about a question, just to say hi, brother. How you doing?
Good to see you, man.
I miss you, man. Miss you. And I tell you, this thing that you're doing here is excellent. I've been watching all of them. It's something that during this time, a lot of us really could use it. Even guys like both Uther and I, that's for sure. So
I loved it. I would love to see you interviewed. This guy is amazing. He's a next generation Duke. He is going to be feeding me my old man lunch in a couple of years. It's going to be brutal. I'm going to be at Estrella. I'm going to be filling my oats. He's going to come out there and put the new generation herd on me. I know it's coming, brother. I know it is.
And the reason why I popped on here was because I can see that Duke Sean's on here as well. And you and him are on the top of my list. You're the 2 left that I want to fight here, and I haven't had the chance to. So,
well, we're going to have to make that happen, man. When they get us out of lockdown, we're going to throw a hell of a West Kingdom crown. I hope people come out and fight and play. You know, this might be a rare crown where I put my armor on, because it might be a crownatorial where we fight crown on Saturday and do a coronation on Sunday. It's going to be a weird weekend, but we're going to try to go big and just come out of our, I don't know about you, but I am an extroverted. I like doing stuff, get out and do it. I'm just going fucking nuts being locked up. And they tell you this, help keep my sanity with all his videos.
No, you've created something here that's got so many people lit up and watching. So it tweaked me, and I wanted to watch this. I saw Uther was going to be on here. I wasn't going to miss it. And so,
perfect.
Yeah,
well, I appreciate you guys' support. So appreciate the support, everybody. All right. With that, we're going to call it good. We went for almost 2 hours, so this will probably be the longest episode we've done to date, which is phenomenal.
I'm the longest-winded Duke.
You are the longest-winded Duke there is, and we have video evidence to prove it. So with that being said, Your Majesty, thank you for coming on and giving us your 5 methods to be a better fighter. I know I've taken a lot of things from it. I'll give a recap later on, but and I want to thank everybody also who's out there in Facebook land and in the video itself for coming on and supporting this, because again, without you guys, without you, Uther, without you guys talking, or without the people watching, this wouldn't be a thing. So it's not just me, it's the whole community wide. And if there's one thing that says that the SCA is still alive, it's everybody that's tuning in right now, all the other stuff that's going on. If you haven't seen Vesper's virtual fighter practice page, definitely tune into that. I think she's got Duke Paul on tomorrow night doing some stuff, Zoom related, about like critiques on shots and how to fire properly, and proper techniques and stuff like that. So make sure you tune into that too. There's a lot of great things going on, and again, it's not just me, it's the society. And if that shows you something, that this is a phenomenal thing going on despite the adversity, this is it. So again, thank you guys. So
all right, Tilius, you're at the top of my fight this guy at Estrella list. You are. I really appreciate the generosity of you having me here and letting me pontificate way too long. So
no, not long enough. I think we could all listen to you talk stick for hours on end. So
all right, brother.
All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.